How much of our past lives, the thousands of moments we experience, help to make us who we are? If you took all of these remembrances, these memories away, what would be left? How much is our personality, our identity, determined by the experiences we have, and how much is already there, pure us? When I found out that an old friend of mine, Douglas Bruce, had mysteriously suffered total amnesia, losing all knowledge of the past 35 years of his life, I decided to make this film. I wanted to know what had happened and why. How had those close to him been affected? What did memory loss feel like, and how had he coped? His astonishing story begins in New York City on July the 2nd, 2003.
The only thing that I know was that I was on the phone to a friend of mine at 8 o'clock at night, and he said to me that I had no real plans to go out, I was going to stay at home. He came and knocked on my door at 7 o'clock in the morning and to see if I wanted to have breakfast, and he rang and said that there was no one there. So sometime between 8 o'clock at night and 7 o'clock in the morning, I must have left the house. As to that particular night, no one knows anything.
Doug had entered the initial stages of a particular type of amnesia, a very rare and bewildering medical phenomena called the fugue state. Unaware of himself, he must have left his apartment and entered the New York subway system.
The fugue state is a very interesting condition in which an individual does not have the ability to retrieve information about their past. They may not even know who they are, but what makes it so interesting is that they're not aware of that at the time. They may be traveling or functioning in some way for hours, days, even weeks, not knowing who they are, but until they're put into a situation where somehow this is brought to their attention, they're unaware of it. At the moment they become aware, then the fugue state per se is broken, and they realize that they don't know who they are.
Doug opened his eyes on a subway train miles from his home.
The first thing I see is this scenery which I don't remember ever having seen at all, ever. And what I'm seeing is basically projects and sort of rundown old concrete buildings, and there was hardly anybody on the subway, and that also, made me feel very uneasy. And then, I didn't know where I was going, so and suddenly, I thought, where have I just come from? And this is, you really struggle with that. And then I suddenly realized, I didn't know who I was. I was scared. I mean, it's not anxiety, it's you're scared. You're in a place where you don't have any bearings, or you don't know anything. It's frightening. It's, quite simply frightening. I had bumps on my head hurt, was throbbing, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll get off at the next stop. And I was in shorts and flip-flops and just a t-shirt, that's all I had, and a backpack. and it was cold and raining. I remember seeing that. People were speaking Russian. You're just trying to think of what you might have been doing, or, you know, where did I have dinner last night, or what was I doing, or what, you know, and nothing comes. You're just trying to grasp at something. It's just a bit like being in darkness and just clutching, you know, feeling your way around, trying to find something to hold on to, and you can't.
The character of the amnesia depends on exactly what happened to cause that amnesia. For example, after a head injury, it would be very common for someone to be unable to remember the few minutes prior to the injury. And then, depending on the extent of brain damage, the retrograde amnesia may reach back a few minutes prior to the event, to, in extreme cases, years or decades prior to the event. However, in the very rare cases, you may have a retrograde amnesia that wipes out not only all individual experiences, but all knowledge of one's past.
Suddenly, Doug became aware of something over his shoulder. The backpack. He searched its contents. 2 sets of keys, a strange vial of liquid, mild painkillers, a Latin American Spanish phrasebook, and a map of New York. But nothing that linked him to who he was. With nowhere else to go, he turned himself into the police.
You know, we normally get the runaway, a lot of runaway kids. They come back a couple of days later, or we find them roaming the streets, or you get the elderly that walk out, they forget to tell someone. That's regular, normal. Someone coming in, losing their memory, not knowing who they are, what their name is, anything at all, I've never had that, and it's very rare.
They say to me, what do you, yes, can we help you? And I said, yeah, and I don't know who I am.
He didn't have any kind of identification on him, nothing. So we thought that he got robbed. But he wasn't struck, he doesn't remember being robbed. He remembers being around, he doesn't remember being hit at all.
They're sort of asking me, do you take drugs? And I think, no, I don't know, but I don't think so. You speak with an English accent, you must be English. And so they'd flick through the book and hadn't seen it. And then there's one guy who sees the number and he goes, yeah, I think I have something.
At last, someone who might be able to identify him.
And then the officer comes out that had the phone, comes out, and I say to him, well, what happened? And she said, well, she doesn't recognize you.
Doug's hopes were dashed. Who was the woman on the other end of the phone? Why did Doug have her number? And why didn't she recognize him?
We just didn't know what to do, what to think about what happened to him. Maybe it was just a freak case, and I guess it was.
Some degree of memory loss is very common, whether we want to call it amnesia or not, as a result of aging, Alzheimer's disease, head injury, so on. Extreme forms of memory loss to which we would give the term amnesia, where one is so impaired by the inability, let's say, to form new memories, in the case of anterograde amnesia, that you can't carry on with your life, are relatively rare, but occur regularly as a result of various forms of neurological insult. Retrograde amnesia, where someone has a complete wipeout of their memory for their entire past, are extremely rare. Those are the rarest of all kinds of amnesias.
So we go off in the ambulance to the hospital, and I walk in the hospital, and that's terrifying because you've got people who, cut open everywhere. People in comas, under drips, drug addicts who are just screaming, people that are maimed, drunks, everything. It's, the worst possible. It's in the emergency room of Coney Island Hospital.
Without a name, the nurses wrote unknown white male on his chart.
They kept asking me my name, and that's really the last thing that I wanted to be asked, because, I didn't know.
Frankly speaking, first time in my life. I've never seen such kind of amazing clinical case like Douglas. So it was known for me only from movies, actually.
Only from the movies?
Only from movies, and from my textbooks, of course.
What got me interested in him, he was a very good-looking man with a cute little English accent and very polite, very, very polite. A lot of people were coming in just to look at him because it was so unusual to have a young, handsome man in the middle of the summer and not to know who they are, where they're from. And he didn't look like he was an alcoholic, drug addict. Very neat, very well-dressed, just totally out of it.
There are three major types of long-term memory. Episodic memory, that's memory for unique experiences that happened in a particular time and a particular place. Semantic memory, that's our general knowledge of the world, the kind of memory that we acquire through learning in school, facts, language, that sort of thing, concepts. And the third one we call procedural memory, and that's memory for skills, memory for knowing how to do things, as opposed to knowing that something is so. So learning to ride a bicycle, learning to play a sport, learning to type, these are all examples of procedural memory.
The hospital ran every test. They found that his blood was completely clean of drugs or alcohol, and that the vial in the backpack was medicine for a dog.
Firstly, when we have such kind of cases, we would like to rule out organic causes, okay, meaning tumors or bleeding into the brain. But as far as I know, the CAT scan was normal, and further evaluation, including outpatient neurological evaluations, didn't reveal anything that could have explained this amnesia. Some small pituitary tumor was found, but it doesn't explain amnesia.
Amazingly, they found a small tumor growing on Doug's pituitary gland that had probably been there since birth. It was not deemed a health risk and was ruled out as a possible cause of the amnesia. The small bumps on his head could have triggered it, but it was unlikely. With no conclusive clinical evidence, he was transferred to the psychiatric unit.
So they moved me to the psychiatric ward, and everything gets put into a locker and everything, and then they say, "Can you sign this?" And I sort of pick up the pen, and there's this sort of thing that just goes like this, and I just went like that, and I said, "Look, I can fucking, I'm somebody. I have a signature, and I couldn't believe that they hadn't asked this, earlier of me, and so I'm really pissed off with them. It's something which is really hard, and I'm trying to, because my signature is a scrawl basically. It's just totally illegible, and then I realised that. That my first letter starts with a D, and they had been calling me Johnny all day. They asked me, well, what do you want to be called? And they said, you want to be called John? So I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. And so, I suddenly realized, I said, look, I'm somebody.
I think what this kind of observation tells us that he could sign his name is that it's not a complete wipeout of memory across the board. Again, we have to come back to the idea that there are different kinds of memory. So clearly what's most affected here is episodic memory. That does seem to be wiped out across the board. Procedural memory, or memory for skills and how to do things, typically in these cases is preserved.
They said, well, until somebody identifies you, you're not going to be released. So they made it quite clear that there's absolutely no way that I was going to be let out unless somebody identified me. So it became more and more important for me to have somebody find me.
He kept on trying the telephone number. He was convinced that Eva was his only way out. She must have some idea of who he was.
And I'm looking at this pink piece of paper, with Eckhart's name on it, and I'm trying to remember, why I had written this down.
I got a phone call from a hospital. Did I know a young man? I said, well, I know many young men. So they put him on the phone, and he said, hello, I'm so scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. That's the only thing he said. I said, you don't know who you are, you don't know your name? No. He said, I don't. I said, well, do you know who I am? He said, no. I said, I'm Eva Eckert. He said, I don't know. Can you please come and pick me up? And I would have liked to go and take the subway to Coney Island right there and then, but I couldn't because I was taking care of my 90-year-old mom who has dementia and who can't be left alone. The voice of this man, I knew I had heard the voice before. I didn't know who it was and who it belonged to, but I knew I had heard the voice. So I called my daughter who had gone to Long Island, and I said, can you imagine what happened? And I told her the story, and she said, Mommy, Mommy, one of these crazy stories, forget about it.
My mom always gets really involved in people's lives who she doesn't know, and sometimes to a fault, and people steal things from her, and whatever, she gets way too involved sometimes.
I said, please drive by this hospital and check if it's somebody, you might even know him, because the voice to me, I don't know if it's not one of your friends.
What I'm supposed to do, like, there's nothing I can do from here, the phone number's busy. And she's like, well, you gotta go there. And I was like, Mom, I'm 3 hours away. It's like the most traffic in the world to go to this hospital to see someone who knows.
The only thing that you're sort of hoping, that you're clinging on to, is that this person is coming and is identifying you. And this pink piece of paper sort of pans out. Otherwise, you know, there's nothing to connect me to anything ever in the world, and I'm sort of stuck there.
My mom gave me the number, and I called the number, and they put Doug on the phone, and I immediately knew who it was. It was like everything, bone in my body, he was so scared.
And she goes, oh my God. And she says, she goes, she said, Doug, and I said, I don't know. And she goes, yeah, you're Doug. I'm coming to get you in half an hour. And you know, for me, that was just, it was, you know, it's like, I don't know, I can't really describe the feeling of, you know, the relief, the sense of, you know, the belonging, I don't know. And she said, yeah, I know who you are, you have a great life and everything. Don't worry, I promise you I'm going to be there in half an hour. You know, my name's Nadine. And so, whatever, this was about 11:30 or something, and she came with a friend of hers, Cara, and sort of identified me. And I mean, the relief of the whole thing of leaving that place and being in the car and then seeing those buildings that had been passed, which are now sort of lit up, and saying, you know, that I was just leaving all that. And
On the morning of July the 4th, Douglas Bruce, 35, woke up to discover that before his amnesia, life had treated him very well. He found out he'd been a successful stockbroker who'd stopped work at 30 to take up photography. He now lived alone in a large loft apartment in the East Village, with his 3 cockatoos and 2 dogs. With a video camera, he started an astonishing record of his new life, filming his first impressions of the world around him.
So, might as well go and have a look at the house. This is where I live. It's nice. These are paintings done by Magda. I also thought that they were mine. I'm starting to get used to the fact that I live here. Before it was as if a stranger, I was living in a stranger's place, a friend or something like that. Just the bedroom. Dream catcher. I've had intense dreams. Stuff. My clothes. It's funny, my clothes, because it feels as if I'm wearing somebody else's. Unless I've worn them twice or something, in which case I'm used to it. But
It's hard to imagine what those first days were like. Not only Doug's past history, but his practical knowledge of how his life actually worked had been erased. He was a stranger in his own home and lost in the streets around it. He had to discover how much money he had in the bank and find out who his family and friends were.
Get off.
Switch it up.
Why?
Switch it up. I am not going to, Douglas, I am not going to do this. Give it to me.
You do look green. This is Magda.
Magda and Doug had lived together for over 8 years and had remained close friends after their relationship ended. She flew back from Poland as soon as she heard the news.
When I arrived here, I decided to, I mean, it's hard to say it that way, but I kind of took control of the whole medical situation, because I probably didn't want to go to bed thinking that maybe he's got a clot in his head and he might not wake up tomorrow or be in a coma. So I really stressed on the fact that we need to go and have him thoroughly, you know, checked out.
How do you feel?
How do I feel? Today?
Generally, yeah.
Oh, I'm sort of confused.
Confused by what?
Well, I don't remember anything past last Thursday. So.
But can you explain exactly the confusion that you have right now in your head? What's confusing you in particular?
Well, what's confusing me is the fact that I can name cities in Australia.
No, I'm saying in everyday life, like right now.
Right now?
Yes.
Well, I'm confused as to why nobody could find what's wrong with me.
One of the things that we're starting to learn about these cases, as more of them have been reported, is that there's just an incredible amount of variability. You can't say that there's any one picture. Some of them recover in a few days. Some that have been tracked have not recovered their memory for years.
Doug's neurologist, his endocrinologist, and his psychiatrist all had their different theories, but still no one could give him a definitive answer. And he was growing tired of the endless examinations.
Well, I've had 2 head MRIs. I've had 1 MRI
Douglas.
on my pituitary gland. I've had 2 CAT scans, 1 CAT scan on my head, 1 on my pituitary gland. I've had 26 blood tests, and they're not showing anything. So we have information that says that
your brain is
fine.
My brain
is functioning.
Die. You're not
but nobody knows
coma.
why my. Yeah, fine, fantastic. So I'm a bit confused about that. What's the problem?
Well, there's nothing.
Isn't that something to be confused about?
Well, psychogenic amnesia occurs in cases where people lose some aspect of their memory and there's no known cause in the brain, or no cause in the brain can be identified. So it's then assumed to be attributable to some sort of psychological cause, as opposed to a direct damage to the brain. The brain function must be changed in some way in psychogenic amnesia for it to occur, but it's not thought to be the result of actual direct physical damage to the brain. For many researchers, they're less interested in studying those cases because there's not the opportunity to learn about normal memory function or how the brain relates to memory. There's also the worry for many researchers that in cases of psychogenic amnesia, the amnesia may be, in some sense, malingered. By malingering, we mean someone is possibly capable of remembering but prefers not to remember. In an extreme form is out and out faking the amnesia.
I know, but I have, in the 2 hours, I have to eat, I have to go home, I have to bring it home, I have to get my junk, get my...
Nadine and Doug had been on a few dates together, and then they broke up. 2 days later, her mother Eva got the call from Coney Island Hospital.
So we have less than an hour. People thought that it was a total scam. That it was like some weird guy that I'd met and gone on a couple dates with and then broken up with or whatever, and then had invented some malady and whatever.
I remember that I had had coffee with him once, with Nadine, that she had introduced him to me. But I must say that I was a little bit suspicious. I was always saying to Nadine, you think he really doesn't remember? And with other friends, you know, that met Doug, and we were all kind of wondering if it could really happen. It's something that you don't want to really accept, that it could happen to all of us potentially.
Hi, Eva.
What? Where is the strainer? Where is the strainer? There's no strainer.
No, there's a strainer. What kind of strainer do you need?
He was giving me this hug that was... I think that when he gave me the hug, I was kind of thinking, no, he's not making this up.
I'm having so much fun.
I feel very strong for him now. I really love him. He's my son. Like he's almost, you know, my son, yeah.
The morning afterwards, when we brought him home, he woke up and it was really weird because I didn't know that much about his family and I didn't really know much. And he didn't really even ask about his family and he just didn't want to talk to anyone on the phone. We woke up really early and he was like, where's my mother? And I had to tell him that his mother had passed away and it was really, and I started crying and he started crying and we were both kind of there and that was a really, really tough, that was probably the toughest thing that I had to tell him was, you know, because we had been trying to contact his sisters and trying to contact people and we couldn't, and then it was like this weird afterthought, like, do I have a mother? Where's my mother?
Doug had been at his mother's bedside when she was dying of cancer in Paris some years earlier. His father and younger sister now lived in Spain. Doug took a terrifying first flight to come face to face with his closest family, not knowing anything about them. He filmed his first trip, and then I visited the family later to find out what it was like to meet him for the very first time.
There were just hordes of people there. I mean, it was so scary. Marina said later that she was afraid to come up to me because my eyes were just popping out of my head. I was just looking, you know, around like this, and there were people with signs everywhere. And I thought that maybe I'd have my father would have a sign for me or something. And people were, because I had the video camera, were saying, "Hey, you know, this way." And then I thought, well, maybe that's my father, and it just didn't make sense, and just so many people, and I was tired, and I had the dog, and...
When he came out from the airport, he was filming. So he was filming our sort of initial reaction of how do we say hi to him? Do we hug him, or is he going to feel that's too much of an invasion of his personal space? And so all these things that you're trying to deal with, he was sort of filming the whole thing, and... Yeah, it was very difficult.
Receipt times haven't changed, still video camera in hand. How's the trip?
Douglas is definitely one of the most important people in my life, and so very nervous that he, just when he saw me, that he wouldn't feel that sort of closeness, or just... Yeah, she's my sister, cool, but, you know, nothing more.
She's really sweet, you know. I'm really happy to have her as a sister. She sort of looks nothing like me. She's dark and with black hair and creased eyes and a big smile. And she's either smiling or frowning. There's no sort of in-between expressions, it seems. And... I don't know. And then I met my father, and my father's not at all what I expected.
Hi, Douglas. So there I was playing the loving father, you know, Douglas, you know, I am your father, I love you, I'm always there, you know, whatever you need, let me know, and whatever. And he looked at me with his usual big grin and he said, well, it's nice to meet you. I felt that this was a moment of grace, if you like.
And dark hair and glasses, and he was wearing this yellow t-shirt, and which he hasn't taken off since. I mean, today's Tuesday and he's been wearing that same t-shirt ever since, every day. So every picture that I've ever taken of him, because he's wearing that yellow t-shirt, and people are just going to think that I took it all in one morning or one day or something, but it's over several days, and maybe he's going to wear it till the end of the vacations, I don't know.
It was one of the few times in my life, I don't want to say it as bragging, but when I was frightened. I just didn't know what I should be doing. And I just did my best. I mean, I didn't, you know, there aren't many cases like this. I mean, if there was some track record of others or something, but, you know, this is apparently a very rare occurrence. So, anyway, he was here and he rested. That's what it came to. But then I began to observe also that in subtle ways, possibly he had changed. He had always been a very outgoing sort of character and fairly sure of himself, and I always wanted it that way as a father anyway. That's what you want your son to be. But now he becomes sort of reflective, if that's the right word. We began to discuss philosophy. To be precise, existentialist philosophy. And he showed interest in it. Now, this is something which Douglas never ever shown any interest in.
Do you think, having seen me for 3 days, that that my core is the person that I was before, or you believe that I am a blank piece of paper that from which I can, you know, become the person who I will be through my actions?
But does it worry you?
No, not at all. I'm just asking you for your opinion.
You are a stranger, as you are to me, because you have no relationship to all the things which we knew together, good and bad. You know, me and your mother formed your character in some ways.
Right. Right.
So now, I don't think I could do that. Well, I mean, it would be wrong. You know, you're a mature man, and but one who has a chance, you know, of looking at all this and saying, well, what does my, as you said, what does my instinct say? And if you're not sure, you can always ask me. I can always give you an opinion. There's nothing wrong with asking questions if you're unsure. You know, and who better, if you think about it, to give these answers than your family.
Right, but I mean, not that I'm not disputing what you're saying, but my family might be intending to do well for me, but it might not be the right judgment. What makes their judgment right over somebody else's?
In some ways he's exactly the same, and in other ways he's a completely changed person. He's a lot more open, he's a lot more emotional in the sense that he shows emotions, but I think maybe he's lost a little bit of his spark that he used to have. But then maybe it wasn't a spark, it was maybe more of an edge, whereas now he's a lot more relaxed, I think maybe a lot more comfortable with who he is. It's strange because until recently I'd gotten used to the idea and it was fine, and in the last couple of months I've started to really, really miss him.
Miss the old Doug.
Yeah.
The final member of Doug's immediate family is his other sister, Christina, I travelled ahead to see her on the day they met for the first time.
The one thing I did find very strange, or I have found very strange, is that he hasn't asked anything about the past in our family, because my sister's much younger than us, and you know, my mother died, so I'm probably the sort of closest link really to his younger years, and he hasn't asked me anything. He hasn't seemed at all interested, which I find really, really weird. Of course, you can't possibly say what you would be like, but I think I would be a bit curious myself if that happened to me, what you know, about my childhood, and you know, so I wanted to speak to him about it.
Hiya.
Hi.
Weird.
How you doing? I'm sorry, I just didn't recognise you with sunglasses.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's definitely a connection. I have definitely a connection with Christina. I felt that, for sure. I could feel there's something. I mean, I felt it with Marina when I first saw her. I mean, it goes beyond what, you know, experiences that you can remember with people. There's something chemical.
Well, you were never happy working. You were never happy doing that, because really, I don't know, are you interested? Did you want some? Yeah. And I guess you were sort of quite driven to making money for whatever reasons. And but you were never happy. You were so stressed out, and you'd be like, you'd come back from after work, you'd be pacing around the kitchen for like, you know, it'd take you ages to calm down or whatever. And this, wow. Yeah. And then I think as soon as you thought you could, you stopped work.
It was great talking to Christina, because she's very matter-of-fact about everything, and she explained a lot of things. So when I explained to her that it was I thought, well, it's thought that maybe what's happened is due to a psychological trauma, and she thought that it was maybe something to do with my mother.
When our mother died, I think it was really difficult, really hard for you. I think it really, but you never would talk about it at all. And you were around when, you know, when she was really ill in Paris, because she spent the last couple of months, she went back to Paris. And that was all really hard. And then you were just really shut in. And I think, you know, we used to joke about it, but like you were my mother's favourite, but you were her little boy. She adored, I mean, I know she loved me, and Marina was different. She was a baby. She was the baby of the family and everything. But Douglas was like the golden boy. The first child died when it was a few days old. So I must have been, well, I can't even imagine what it was to be like. So then she was, you know, and then she had, you know, she had you.
It's possible that, you know, that there were certain traumatic experiences that happened in my past life, and my brain didn't, or me or whatever, didn't want to deal with it anymore, and it shut down in order to block it out. When I do remember, you know, I am apprehensive of the fact that I'm going to remember things that are, you know, that are quite worrying, quite traumatic, really. And I know, you know, I know they're out there.
Doug could only hear about the experiences of his life second-hand. His past now belonged to everyone else but him. The only place he could get close to the things he had done, on his terms, was in a storeroom in Paris, where many of his past belongings had been kept.
Douglas Bruce and guest, Mr. and Mrs. Jack Baines. Request the pleasure of your company at the marriage of their daughter Michelle Rachel to Mr. Nicholas Charles Terrace. Do you know who that is? Yeah. Every little square inch is, you know, alludes to some, you know, personal memory, whether it's clothing that I might have worn, or, you know, or shells that I picked up somewhere, or, you know, those two lances up there, or these paintings. And it's not open to somebody's interpretation or of events, which is, you know, normally what I have to deal with. This is actually what is and what was. There's no, you know, everything's tangible here. There's that head is that head. It's not, you know, somebody saw it a particular way or whatever. And so, you know, ultimately this is, you know, it's a room of complete truth. It's funny because I used to hoard things away, it seems, whereas now I don't have, you know, any importance for stuff like that.
Why should Doug be obsessed with the past, when what lay in front of him was a voyage of unbelievable discovery? Doug now saw the world with the eyes of a newborn baby, but appreciated it with the mind of an adult.
I mean, I would be aware of everything. Everything would interest me. You know, everything. I mean, you know, everything was totally new. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it was completely crazy the first month in New York was just totally crazy. Just watching the relationship between a guy and a girl, or the way people express themselves by the way they dress, or their mannerisms, or everything. I mean, you know, everything was totally new, basically.
Chocolate mousse, I think. Or did I just hear about that?
I remember actually eating my first chocolate mousse for the first time. I remember strawberries, they said here, because Cara and Nadine got great thrills in, okay, well, but here, these are blueberries, these are sort of, let's go out, let's go to a restaurant. Italian, Cuban, you know, French, everything. I'm trying to discover it all. You know, when I went to the ocean for the first time, there was not a cloud in the sky. It was a beautiful orange light, and the beach was completely empty. And then you just get to the ocean, and the ocean was just crazy, the colours, and I was so overwhelmed I started to cry. It wasn't so much the beauty of it, it was just you know, just as I said, I was going to show I had difficulty in breathing. I was just overwhelmed. I put my feet in like that, and just the sense of it, just the energy rushing onto my legs. I could feel it. I don't know how to describe it. It was just an extraordinary energy that was just going around, because the waves were just breaking, and so it was surf really that was just breaking all around my knees, and it just felt absolutely amazing. And I mean, the texture of it. And then I dived in. I didn't know if I could swim, and you know, the moment I realised that I could instinctively, and it was fantastic. First time I went to the Met, I mean, it just blew me away. You know, I'm thrilled because I do a history class at school, and it's enabled me to find out the last 500 years of what's been going on in the world, you know, and that's like a great help. Yeah, I want to know everything.
With everything fresh in his eye, Doug saw no cliches or stereotypes, only originality.
There are some aspects of memory that are shared among individuals. Our general knowledge, psychologists call that semantic memory. Your semantic memory and my semantic memory might have a lot of overlap, but our episodic memories probably have very little overlap, because my specific experiences have been very different from yours and from everyone else. So it's that episodic memory system that I think is tied to our uniqueness and our individuality.
It's snowing.
Doug filmed the first time he saw snow, and fireworks.
Wow. Snow.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I get it.
I do remember that in the months afterwards, when things kind of settled down and I was back in school and he was in school, he'd come in and be like, I discovered the best band. And I'd be like, oh, what are they called? And he's like, the Rolling Stones. And I'm like,
oh, you know, I actually introduced Doug to smoking weed. I got him stoned for the first time. Can I tell that on camera?
You can,
That was the funniest thing. I was like, come on, I was convinced he was going to get his memory back.
This picture here is a bit of a mystery. I have no idea what it is. Looks beautiful. It just doesn't seem to belong in the flat. I don't know, maybe it's not mine. And that's me with two of my best friends. I think Pete Small and James Phillips, I think. Jim Phillips. I spoke to Pete the other day. He's nice. I was at a wedding.
Doug had spent 15 years of his life in England, but he had no recollection of his time here or the friends he had made, including me. The last time we saw Doug was at a friend's wedding 3 months before his amnesia. 11 months later, and we still hadn't seen him, and we were starting to worry. We didn't know what was going on, or what we should do. I went to see Pete, who used to be Doug's closest friend.
It's very difficult to know exactly what goes through his head, because, you know, he's just forgotten everything. Sometimes I'd be talking to him. Like, initially, he was like, because the last conversation we had was talking about Chelsea Football Club, just after they'd been bought by the Russian guy. You know, and he was massive Chelsea. And then the next time we speak to him, after he's lost his memory, I rang him up, and Magda had written, like, a little sort of paragraph on everybody he knew from all around the world, in case somebody rang him up. And I rang him up, knowing that he's lost his memory, and I've just gone, hi, Doug, this is Pete Small, you don't know me. He's gone, yeah, and he's obviously reading it off the piece of paper. He's gone, Pete Small, Chelsea Football Club. And he's finished the sentence by going, whoever the hell they are. You know, and that's the first conversation I've had with him, and I'm like, you know, sort of suddenly realise, yeah, he really has lost his memory, because he wouldn't, you know, unless he's the greatest bullshitter in the world. You could just tell by the voice that is, you know, what is this Chelsea Football Club?
But you haven't seen him in person?
I haven't seen him, no. No, should really go out and see him, to be honest. I was going to go at the end of last year, but it's difficult. I mean, that's the big step, that's the big one.
I asked Doug if he wanted to make this film. I wanted to bring him back to London and record the emotional reunion with his old friends.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure how he'd react.
Yeah, but, well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. It's interesting because, you know, because you and I used to be friends. If I came for that weekend, would you mind if I filmed what we did? Okay. Excellent.
I'd met Doug through a large group of mutual friends. We were all in our early 20s, with everything to play for and nothing to lose. Or so we thought. The Doug I remember was fast-living. He was generous with his cash and had a penchant for monkey bikes, two-tone, and expensive champagne. He was a compelling character, slightly eccentric with a vaguely arrogant air and a sharp tongue.
Here, come here. This way.
What?
This way. I would like to introduce you to somebody. Les autres filment autre chose. Il n'y a rien de plus chiant que regarder le truc, la même chose pendant 10 minutes. Dans ta bouche.
These home movie clips, a few snatched glimpses out of an entire lifetime, hardly tell you anything about who he really was. How can you reconstruct a man from moments distorted by the camera, and who was behind it?
What do you want, Doug?
On 600 US.
What are you going to do if he doesn't give it to you? Tell the camera what you're going to do to him.
600 things, I'll then go and cash his ticket, so that'll probably be okay, and then he can sort himself out.
Excellent news.
That's the way I look at it.
Means I can sell his ticket on from Miami to London. We can both be.
No, I was thinking more along the lines of cashing his ticket and maybe upgrading myself to first class on the way home. Is that fat boy? 5,400 meters, base camp Everest.
Every breath is like there's not enough oxygen.
No. It's like
someone's holding your chest tight.
Yeah. It's like having had a tequila and Southern Comfort bender.
Don't make me laugh, it hurts.
To tell you the truth, I was quite scared. How much had he changed over the last 8 months? Who was the person I was about to meet?
Doug? It's Rupert.
Doug.
How you doing?
I see.
I see.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
You alright?
Yeah.
I've just got to get a couple of bags out of the bloody thing. Whoops.
Is that all you came with?
Huh?
That's it?
Yeah. It's quite a lot, isn't it? I've got, yeah, no, I didn't need much. Just got my little camera. Yeah.
So what does that do?
Huh?
Those first moments were uncomfortable. I started to ramble. Talking about my cameras was easier than asking him, "Do you know who I am?" Of course he didn't. He'd lost his memory. I was a complete stranger. The more we talked, the less I recognized the person in front of me. Our 15 years of history didn't mean anything. We had to start all over again. I felt there was some kind of rapport. He looked and sounded just like the man I used to know, but it was obvious something had changed. Would I like the new Doug? Would he like me?
I'm meeting you for the first time. I have no kind of background or anything to go by other than our phone conversations. So it's really an instinctive thing. Either you're feeling it or you're not. And there's good friends that I've had in the past who I've met them and I just don't get them. I don't feel it, and so I don't hang out with them, which for them is tough. And
it must be tough for them.
I suppose, I don't know. Well, that's obviously one of the more disturbing things or worrying things for me about the situation is that after the accident I felt much more comfortable with people who didn't know me. And it's basically the idea of expectancy, that somebody's expecting me to be the person that they knew, which in a way I probably am anyway, but for me it's a completely new start.
I was very confused. Because I no longer knew the person across the table, it was difficult to feel any emotion. It was almost as if the person I'd cared about wasn't in the room. And I was amazed by what he had to say next.
The longer that it goes on, the less I care if my memory comes back. And if anything, I feel slightly apprehensive about when does come back, because how is it going to come back, and what am I going to think, and so I'm thinking that my mind isn't actually wanting it to come. I mean, not wanting it to come back, but there's no pressure on it to come back, and so maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't care too much anymore.
For people that know him very well, this situation right now is very strange, because for me, it's sort of, he's by getting used to who he is now, he's sort of like undermining his previous self. We see each other, and we spend time together, and we hang out, and I'm sort of getting used to the new Doug, which sort of erases the old Doug for me. And it's very weird, because that sort of has an effect on my own history too, which seems to be undermined at this point, because I don't think, like, then where is the person that I've had a history with?
That person now only existed in our memories or on film. I'd brought over some old home movies, almost to prove to Doug that we were old friends. I was curious to see what effect it would have on him.
Who's that? What do you think it is? Mr. Small?
That's Pete?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's you. This is Rupert's effect. That's Rupert.
Oh, wow. Where are we going? Looks as it says ladies there.
That's you.
Wow.
That's you. That's you.
It's excellent. It's so good.
Wow.
But I mean, I think
Can I see it again? It makes me feel sad watching this. I think it's a bit like looking at an old film or something, and seeing something you like about that film and wanting to, wishing, for instance, that you lived at that time. Do you see what I'm saying? And here it's odd, because I'm actually in the pictures, but I don't really feel any direct connection to it at all. I don't feel any connection to this character, because, I don't feel that I look like that, and I can't identify dressing like that, and I don't know anybody else in I haven't met any of them, so this is, it's just really like viewing a movie. I find it sad, just watching this. I like, it's these little moments here, like, for instance, when Pete walks around here into this supermarket, and he gives that little sort of nod of a head like that, and some kind of expression. It's sort of these little mannerisms, that you probably know really well from him, or you would expect that from him, and I don't know anything.
Dislocated from his past, had Doug now become a completely new person? Or was he the same person, greatly altered by the defining experience of his life? A question I couldn't really answer, but one that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries.
I think there's no doubt that Douglas is the same man, in the sense that someone could trace his existence from birth to where he is now. But he wouldn't feel responsible for what he did before his memory loss. And so in that sense, I think that he could be said not to be the same person. But it is true, I think, that our distinctions are talking about who's a person and who's not, whether people dispute whether an embryo is a person and so on. This is actually a matter of the way we use language in normal cases. And when we get something which is very rare, very abnormal, then we don't quite know what to do with our language, how to fit what's happened into the categories that we're accustomed to using. So I think we have to acknowledge that we don't quite know what to say. But I would, on the whole, go along with John Locke and say, certainly the same man, questionably the same person.
Given a new lease of life, Doug seemed to be more articulate than before, more serious, more sensitive, more focused, as if his senses had been sharpened by a rebooting of the system.
Coming back in September, I needed, to have a purpose in life, and photography gave me that, going to school and everything. So I really, try to devote as much time as possible to it. And I've obviously got a lot to catch up on compared to everybody else. School, I think, is a really important thing for me because, it gets me up to speed for a lot of things. I mean, people say to me that I'm much more into photography now than I was before, for sure. And for me, it was definitely a thread. It gave me a purpose of life.
Prior to his memory loss, Doug had been studying photography for 2 years. In order to rejoin the course, he had to relearn all of those skills in just 2 months.
We first needed to make sure that he was ready to go into his 3rd year. So he quickly amassed all those skills with the help of some of our faculty. And that in and of itself was really interesting, the fact that he was such a quick learner. It was almost as if some of these procedures and processes were familiar to him in some completely recessed way. A creative sensibility, for the most part, as far as conventional wisdom goes, is formed by our memory, is formed by our past. It's the accumulation of our experience. If you wipe that slate clean, how do you develop a sensibility? How do you figure out what it is that's relevant for you? If you're going to pursue your art with any sort of depth, with any kind of resonance, how do you figure out what your subject is? I think that his work has gained enormous depth. He's basically always been interested in portraiture. I think the portraiture that he was making was problematic, ideologically problematic, and I think that soon after his accident he made some amazing images, very simple, very austere portraits of some people that he was close to or becoming close to or perhaps had a relationship with before his accident. And there was a sadness in the portraits, and there was a sense of depth and also a sense of emptying out in the portraits that I thought was a surrogate for what he was experiencing. In a sense, I thought that they were self-portraits.
Come on, Ganja. I'm obviously nervous about going to London. I'm going to meet friends who've known me for 20 years and some who I'm quite close with, it seems. And, I could be sitting in a restaurant next to them and wouldn't know who they were. And I always sort of fear the expectations and almost feel that I have an obligation to them as well, morally.
Known each other for 20 odd years, going back to probably 1986. He's definitely been scared to see other people, and and where they're similar. I mean, if I wasn't scared about meeting Doug, then I would have met him already.
although he's coming over and he's meeting us, it's taken so long, and you know, from what I've heard, what people have said, you know, that he doesn't actually worry too much about the fact that he's lost his memory. So it's not like he's desperate to reacquaint himself with his past and his past relationships. So it's almost going to be harder, I suppose, than meeting somebody fresh, because there's that knowledge that there was some sort of relationship beforehand. But for him, it must be like, why did I hang out with these guys? And what's so interesting about them?
He's got to make the decisions out of that, as he gets to know his past, which bits to re-embrace and which bits to discard. And in some ways, he's quite lucky that he's in a position where he can make that decision. Because if he suddenly meets someone and he doesn't like them anymore, and you go, sorry, I'm not the same person I was, piss off. It'd be great.
Before the reunion in a local pub, I took Doug on an impromptu sightseeing trip. I don't know whether it's stranger for him or for me.
It's much more beautiful than New York, that's for sure. Well, it's a bit like the Upper East Side a bit.
This is Buckingham Palace coming up on the left, yeah?
Is it? Brilliant.
These people are here because it's changing of the guard.
I can't believe how many people come to see what's going on.
So they're changing the guard, man.
Which means what?
Well,
the different guys...
These soldiers come down here and then they change with the ones over there and then the other ones
And
go
these are the
back.
guys who guard the palace? There aren't any soldiers. Oh, here they are.
That way! Back that way.
Hang on, so wait, let me get this straight. Let's just check out how many people there are here. Look at that. It's like a Gursky picture.
That's Westminster Abbey. And, sorry.
We'll go past 10 Downing Street now.
What's Downing Street?
That's where the Prime Minister, whoever it may be, runs the country from.
So he lives there?
Yeah, he lives there, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer lives next door.
It's a beautiful city. I mean, what I've seen of it. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of those, you know, opening scenes in that film 28 Days Later. That's the only kind of association I can make with it. But it's amazing. It's, you know, wow.
It is... I don't know, I suppose I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be odd. It's going to be odd, but I suppose I haven't really thought about what's going to happen, really.
All right,
mate, how you doing? Good to see you, buddy. All right, Dougie.
How you doing?
All right, good.
How you doing? I don't know. Whatever.
Take a seat. Welcome back to England.
Whatever you guys are drinking.
Private bar.
So it's all a bit overwhelming.
You good?
Yeah, it's just
knackered.
Yeah, no, a bit jet lagged, and I think I'm really in need of food more than anything else. You look just like in your picture, anyway.
Rocky.
I wasn't sure if I was going to recognise Jim because in the picture you had
your whole relationships with people are built up on frameworks and conversational references that you've built up over those years. And once you take those references away, it becomes very difficult to communicate with someone. Doug and I share a love of cricket, and one in particular was he was obsessed with West Indian cricket, and we used to go to test matches in the Caribbean. And I sent him an email, and I said on the email, it said, I look forward to reintroducing you to the ways of West Indian cricket. The email I got back said, what is West Indian cricket? Is it a drink or some kind of insect? And it was like, well, you know, where do you start? I don't know. Shazzy.
Just 21 or something. Because I'm normally, you know, in New York, really, around girls most of the time. It was a strange experience to be in a sort of, you know, lad environment. The hair, yeah.
Devastating thick hair.
Yeah, you do look similar, it's true.
I just feel 20 years older than him now, all of a sudden, which is really odd. You know, and, you know, he's lost all his cynicism, and which was a good, you know,
that was a good trait. It wasn't a bad cynicism. It was like a hilarious sort of sarcastic sort of outlook on life and everything. It was, but flippant and whatever.
I was very moved. I mean, I can see that they love me a lot, and I think that that they'll have trouble saying it because anything emotional seems to be pretty repressed amongst them. I think in the English culture generally it seems. I think lots of people would. Cheers.
Happy first.
Cheers. Cheers, guys.
That's the maddest thing I've ever said to you. I don't know what it is.
It was an uncomfortable meeting, but really good to see everyone together. On the surface, it looked like things were back to normal, but deep down, we knew they weren't. When Pete's wife Alessia arrived, I wondered that maybe Doug had more in common with Edward, his new godson, than he did with us.
Go and meet your godson. Wow.
Check that out.
There you go.
I wanted to get his memory back, but he doesn't, so there's a bit of conflict there. But as long as he's happy, that's cool, but, I mean, if you ask anybody who knows him, you definitely want him to suddenly sort of ring you up and go, hey, I'm back.
He lives in New York, I live over here, but I don't suspect for a second it's going to develop to how it was before. I mean, he doesn't remember me, doesn't remember other people, but he's still Doug.
They're great. I mean, I like them a lot. They seem like like good people, and I have no problems about seeing them again and hanging out. If they want to come and see me, that's cool. It's no problem. Have a great summer, and I'll see you. Well, I'll speak to you this week from New York or something. Okay? Do you want Narelle to come with you?
Everyone from Doug's past had to accept that the old friendship had been lost, and we'd all have to make the effort to become close friends again.
Thank you for coming.
No, it's no problem.
Thank you for coming. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, come on, I'll walk you back. No, that's not nice.
Before he came to London, Doug had met and fallen in love with an Australian girl called Narelle. Now we had some serious competition on our hands.
It's true what I am saying.
Do you know where we are here?
I'm always right. Yeah, I do. We're at the Ritz.
And this is first love.
Right, I mean, yeah, the first time I felt real love. It's intense. I mean, it's all-consuming. It's I don't think of anything else when I'm with her. It's just amazing. I'm so happy to have met her. She's the most wonderful, loving, caring person, funny, beautiful.
Well, to be honest, when I met him for the first time, I didn't know. It's not like she introduced me. Hi, this is Doug, the guy with amnesia. It wasn't anything like that, and it's not something that I would have ever noticed.
So how long have you two been going out for then?
11 weeks and 4 days.
You're asking me to pinpoint why I love Doug. Because he's a very genuine, loving, beautiful, wonderful person. That he has no fault yet.
He seems to have slowly begun to reintegrate himself with his friends, which is important, with his family, which makes me very happy.
I think he's, you know, he's found himself. It sounds a bit tacky, but I think he has, and he's built himself a little life, and he's a lot more confident and comfortable with who he is now than when he first came. I think it was maybe a bit too much for him to take in at once anyway. He's had the great opportunity to reinvent himself and become a completely different person. Not many of us get that chance. You know, start afresh and put behind all the things we wish we'd done differently or wish we hadn't done at all. And every day is a new day and brings new things, and he learns from it. And, you know, we tend not to do that. We get sort of stuck in our daily routine, and we don't learn daily.
The family has always felt that, you know, misfortune will always come in a lifetime, and you have to know how to treat it.
After seeing his family, Doug went surfing in Biarritz. Out on the waves, the swelling on his pituitary gland, first spotted by the doctors in Coney Island, ruptured. He suffered excruciating headaches and blinding flashes of light. The French doctors recommended he return home to his neurosurgeon. In New York, the scans indicated that Doug was not in any immediate danger, but he had to wait 6 months for his final checkup. If the tumor had regrown, he would need brain surgery.
Hey there, how are you?
I don't know.
Good to see you.
I'm good to see you.
Good to see you too. Do you guys have a new MRI, or you had it here at Sinai?
I had it, yeah, here 2 days ago.
2 days ago,
It should
okay.
be on the...
Yeah, it should be on
I didn't bring my old films,
okay,
I
I
forgot
remember.
this morning, I'm sorry.
That's fine. And how have you been feeling?
Good, I think. I haven't really had headaches or anything like that, so it's been pretty good.
And what about your vision? Have you had any trouble reading?
No,
watching?
sometimes it bright light still hurts.
Hurts or bothers you? I mean, is it sharp pain, a dull pain?
No, it's a dull pain.
It's a dull.
But it's not sharp at all.
It's like this neon light is bothering
Yeah,
you
if
right
I was
now?
to look at it, I mean, no. If I look at it, or sometimes bright daylight does it a bit.
Okay.
But it's not, you know, it's not as it was when it sort of hemorrhaged in Biarritz. So
here are the pictures on the computer, and I'm just going to look at them. What we're looking at is the area where the lesion was, and there is really not much there to speak of on this sequence, but we obviously need to look at all the different sequences. And so here it's where your pituitary gland is, and it looks very normal.
Oh, wow.
And same there. I couldn't see a cyst today, and I couldn't see a
so
cyst.
it's retracted. You were saying that's fantastic.
Right. That's really good news. Okay.
Right. No, that's really great. Thank you for
Very
this.
well.
So, I mean, the only the question which I think I've asked you before is if you think this could have triggered my memory loss.
We see a lot of patients that have hemorrhages in the pituitary for other reasons, like tumors and such. And I don't remember ever seeing, somebody with the same degree of memory loss that you have. And so whenever we see something that is out of the ordinary, it's always difficult to explain. Is it possible that the hemorrhage caused this alteration in your memory circuitry? And the answer is yes, it's possible. Is it common? And the answer is absolutely not.
Right.
The bottom line, for what I'm concerned, is that you do not need any surgery.
Yeah. That's the bottom line as far as I'm concerned.
So that is the bottom line.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, good seeing you too.
Okay.
Take care, Doctor.
Bye-bye.
Nearly 2 years on, and no amount of tests or consultations could reveal a conclusive answer to his amnesia. The true nature of Doug's condition extends beyond the bounds of current medical technology.
For the most part, there really is no one place in the brain that you can point to and say, there's a memory. You can't go into the brain and just point your finger and locate a memory. It turns out that memories are much more distributed than that. They're distributed in different parts of the brain. This is especially so for episodic memories. So a memory is a network of brain regions, and all those brain regions have to come together in order for us to retrieve a memory. So I think this helps us to understand that there's a sense in which all memories are constructed. They're just not literal replays of events that have happened to us.
Through the making of this film, I'd seen Doug undergo huge changes, and I'd like to think we'd become good friends again. At home in his new flat with Narelle, he finally seems to be engaging with his past, which is strange because my attachment to the old Doug is fading. I now only want him to get his memory back, if he does.
You hope he gets his memory back?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's a little bit scary to think about him waking up one day and having his whole life with him again in his memory, and, you know, will he still be the same person, and will he still be in love? Will he still love me? You know, that sounds silly, but, yeah, I guess, in a way, I want him to get his memory back.
12th of May, 16th of June, 83. What does this say? I took my art O-level, 9 hours, and my teacher thinks I may have passed. I took German oral and got about 29 out of 50, which is encouraging. Played house cricket yesterday and got 3 wickets and a catch on the first 11 pitch. I tell you, these letters are so uninformative.
I would like to have been able to remember things as a child. I think that's got such a profound effect on everybody. It seems that that those are things that I would like to be able to remember. I wish I could remember my mother. I mean, I have pictures of her on the walls in the apartment. And it seems that we were very close, so that's something, you know, that I feel, you know, that I missed out on. Part of a reason for the photo project is because I see memory as something akin to, you know, travelling in time. And everybody's got this ability to, you know, to travel in time just by going back to places in the past that they experienced or whatever. And I don't, you know, and I don't have that. If you encode things and then, depending on who you are as a person, you remember them in a specific way, and then sort of, you know, create this personal history which is, you know, a sort of bazaar, if you like, of a bazaar of myths, of truths, of embellishments, of all kinds of, you know, hodgepodges of distortions, and if that's, you know, if that makes up who we are, then who are we really, you know? Do you know?
The doctors say Doug has a 95% chance of getting his memory back, but no one can tell him when that will be. What will it feel like when his new life and his forgotten past collide to form a new character he's yet to meet?